Morning, everyone. It is the 818th round. Wow, that went quick. Feels like it was only a few months ago we're at 500. Anyway, welcome to the Lifestyle and Community Committee meeting. Of course, it's Tuesday the 10th of May 2022, and today's headlines include confirmation of minutes, the conflict of interest declarations, a proposed agenda, forward program, our local area works program, update, a petition regarding unlawful gatherings at Pizzey Park, raves, I understand, our asset condition and infrastructure renewal requirements, the Mudgeeraba Aquatic Centre update, and a response to petitions regarding the Palm Beach Aquatic Centre redevelopment. And finally, a closed session item concerning the implementation update of the Pizzey Park Master Plan. Councillors and those tuning in, we also have 3 general business items to get to today. So a lot of heavy lifting happening at the Lifestyle and Community Committee. Now, presently, we have a number of start items. They include the proposed agenda items for the Lifestyle and Community Committee, the local area works program, so that's 5.1 and 6.1, 6.2, the petition regarding the raves, 6.3, the asset renewal plan, 6.5, the response to petition regarding the Palm Beach Aquatic Centre redevelopment. Just quickly, councillors, was there an appetite to unstar any of those start items? Abiel?
Thanks, Chair. Just had a question for the forward plan.
Yep, no worries. We can, a question, or would you foreshadow changes?
I was hoping there'd be a change, yeah.
Okay, so that's 5.1. We will unstar. Councillors, would you like to unstar any other items? No, I think we're having a presentation regarding Pizzey Park, so we'll keep that unstarred. And the GBs, of course, will be unstarred as well. Okay, so moving on then, attendance and apologies. We have no apologies tendered to the chair, no leaves of absence. Confirmation of minutes. Would someone like to move that the minutes of the previous meeting be endorsed? Councillor Tozer, do I have a seconder? Councillor Gates. Councillors, any questions on that? No. Speakers against? No. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. Councillors, we now move on to conflict of interest declarations.
I have a conflict for 6.4. Deal with it now or at 6.4, whichever you prefer.
Why don't we deal with it now, and then that way we can move through the agenda. Councillor Tozer?
No problems at all. So, pursuant to Section 150 EQ 3B and 3C of the Local Government Act 2009, I provide notice to the meeting. I have a declarable conflict of interest in this matter, the natures in particular of which are as follows. The entity operates the council pool at Mudgeeraba. I probably need to add that. The council pool at Mudgeeraba, Belgravia Leisure, provided a cumulative total of about $1,500 worth of swimming lessons in return for a promotional video and other promotional activity in 2016-17. Whilst it was fairly informal, and the name of the other person is Belgravia, they provided swimming lessons for my children, and they're the current operator of Mudgeeraba Aquatic Centre. And over several dates throughout 2016-17, they refused to take payment for those swimming lessons. And so I'm seeking to participate in decision-making about the matter because of the, well, if you can just scroll down a little bit more, because there's been 6 years since the gift, and I have a role representative of many community users of the local pool.
All right. Before we go to a procedural motion, I might just ask a question of the Director in order to inform my thinking. So, Director, a test that I usually apply when determining my approach to handling a DCOI is whether the other party stands to earn a gain or suffer a loss as a consequence of the decision at hand. Could you just provide me with some insight around the decision that we're making today and whether there will be any material impact on the operator?
So, Councillor Vorster, the plans that we have for Mudgeeraba Pool are plans that we've had for some time, so they're not plans that have come through any connection to Councillor Tozer. You know, so these are plans that are actually quite overdue in terms of the asset renewal. The Belgravia will benefit from this because the pool will be upgraded, but they will only benefit for the time that they've got the contract that's been in time for some place and not related to this asset renewal.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, I suppose, and I don't want to stray into something that would prejudice the commercial interests of the operator, but does that contract have some time still to run?
How long has it gone?
23 with 2 years, with 1 year option after that.
So a 1 year to go and then a +2 option that we've got after that.
All right, thank you for that information. Councillors, do I have a procedural motion?
Can I just ask a following question, just to make sure I'm very clear? I was of the view that the contract expired before any of the capital works were proposed to start, but there's no capital works in the office's report.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's how I perceived it as well. Yeah, great, thank you.
Councillor Gates?
I'm sorry to say, but I've got a difficulty.
Sorry, I think
with
your
this.
microphone. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I have a difficulty with this, and I'd like to ask Councillor Tozer, did he ever pay for swimming lessons for his children at the Mudgera Bar pool, and for how long they had those lessons?
So the answer is yes. I did pay.
And over what period did they have the lessons?
In 2016, there was a period that was, I think, approximately 30 weeks or thereabouts, where on a fortnightly basis, I took my children to the pool and they refused payment for a time, and then I made it very clear that that wasn't acceptable, and so I paid.
Okay, but it
The
was
answer is yes, I did pay.
So I guess my difficulty is around the exchange of a promotional video,
Yes.
which is basically our role to promote our own council facilities as elected representatives. So I'm a little bit uncomfortable with it, Chairman. So my view would be that the safest thing for Councillor Tozer to do would be to leave the room. I don't know what other members of the committee feel, but I'm happy to move that Councillor Tozer, due to the acceptance of significant benefit.
Okay, so we have three options here. One is to permit Councillor Tozer to participate in the decision-making process unfettered. The second is to allow him to participate, but to provide limits on that. So those constitute the two options in A. But Councillor Gates, your preference
Well,
or
I
your
just think-
preparedness is B?
My preference is for Councillor Tozer not to participate in this decision.
So, Councillor Gates, looking at the pro forma words provided for B, you will see that we're not required to provide reasons, merely that Councillor Tozer must not participate in the decision because of the councillor's conflict of interest. Are you satisfied with
I am.
those words?
I am.
Now, that's Councillor Gates's view, but of course, in order for this to be a live motion, we do need a seconder, otherwise we have an opportunity to revise an approach. Would anyone like to second Councillor Gates's position?
I will second
Councillor
it, but
Caldwell?
I'll speak to it because I don't do it lightly, but I think it is the safest course of action. So,
Right, so we have a procedural motion moved by Councillor Gates and seconded by Councillor Caldwell, and it reads as follows, that Councillor G. Tozer must not participate in the decision because of the councillor's conflict of interest. And for those who are tuning in, that conflict of interest was declared by Councillor Tozer in an earlier step. Councillor Gates, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you. And look, I do so also reluctantly, but I just don't think that I can be satisfied with sufficient detail in regards to the value of the gift over 30 weeks for 3 children. So I don't know what the cost of swimming lessons is, but I have a discomfort about not only the gift but the reason for the gift. So I'll leave it at that.
Councillor Gates has opened debate with any speakers against. Did you have a question, Councillor?
Yeah. Just could, through you, Chair, maybe just clarify Belgravia's involvement. So do they have a lease over the whole precinct, or okay, lease?
I owned the pool, not the playground.
Okay, just the current aquatic centre. Okay. And then through you, Chair again, did Councillor Tozer get any advice from the city solicitor on this, and just maybe what she provided?
Councillor Tozer, would you like to share that advice?
Yeah, so I engaged with a city solicitor last week, and asked her about this matter. I asked her about the length of time. I asked her about the nature of what had previously been disclosed, and she made it clear to me that she thought a declarable conflict of interest was the most appropriate way forward, and recommended that I complete the form as I have done on previous meetings, and I did that and submitted it to the meeting. So that was the extent of my engagement with the City Solicitor on this matter.
Awesome. So another question, Councillor. So, and then we'll come to Councillor O'Neill.
Just following on, Chair, just saying the dates, does that fall within what's the terminology, the nominated period?
So-
and then the dollar amount, where does that?
We talked about the time. So the time was just after the start of the previous term, which is captured within that time frame. I think the words of the legislation are the immediate prior term or something along those lines.
Relevant to.
Yeah. So it's captured inside that. Yeah, I can't really speak for the City Solicitor beyond the fact that it was captured within the time, and her words were that she believed a declarable conflict of interest was the way forward. We didn't discuss whether it was prescribed or not, but I'm assuming that if she thought it was prescribed, I feel confident she would have provided that advice to me. She was quite clear in her written advice, which was that it was a declarable interest and that I should fill out the appropriate form.
Well, I'm personally satisfied that we're not dealing with a prescribed interest, because that's a very firm test under the legislation. So that deals with the quantum of the funding, also the nature of the donor. So I tend to think a DCOI is the best approach, and we have now 3 options available to us. Councillor O'Neill?
Thanks, Chair. I know that you've actually made this declaration before, Councillor Tozer. Can you recall whether you left the room on that occasion?
Yeah, so there's 2 occasions where I made the declaration. My recollection is that one of them related to, again, general pool capital, which is councils, and I remained in the room. And there was other where it related to a contract specifically for the operational activity of the pool, and my understanding is I left on that occasion. I'm willing to be standard corrected, but I saw there being 2 different things where when we're talking about the assets owned by council, that was different to when we're actually talking about a contract for the pool operator, and I left on that occasion.
Okay, thanks.
I just want to ask another question, if I may, just to get some clarity on the timeline. The proposed renewal works, they're proposed for a period beyond the existing contract with the operator, correct? In other words, we will have an opportunity to test the market, and perhaps there's a different operator who might end up taking responsibility for the pool before the works are carried out? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Chair.
Councillors, any further questions? No.
want to speak to it.
Yeah, please.
So, look, as I said earlier in seconding this, I don't do this lightly, because my preference is usually that we support the local councillor staying in the room on important local issues. But on this occasion, I just can't see that the public's view of this matter can be served by Councillor Tozer remaining in the room. It is impossible for me to decouple sufficiently the feelings that must be attached to having got a year's worth of free swimming lessons for 2 kids and the decision to upgrade the pool. And I think that the public interest is served by us taking the cautious approach for everyone's sake, including Councillor Tozer himself, that we ask Councillor Tozer not to participate in this matter. Now, I think that probably on reflection, Councillor Tozer would do things differently, or I hope that he would do things differently, because we all try our best not to get ourselves in these situations. But I think this is unavoidable. The City Solicitor, in her advice, as I understand it, is she's taken it to the point of saying it is a declarable conflict. There is no advice beyond that to say that we shouldn't make the decision, and I think it's over to us to make sure that we are being as transparent as possible. So in the interests of the public's view of this matter and the best and most robust decision that we can make, I think Councillor Tozer shouldn't participate in it, and that despite the fact that he has value as the local councillor, on this occasion it doesn't outweigh for me the public perception of what the conflict is and the magnitude of that conflict. So I'm sorry, Glenn, but that's my view.
Before I put this to a vote, I just have a question for Councillor Tozer. And I ask this question because I think the mechanism that allows us to support a councillor continuing in a decision-making process is about ensuring that we end up with the best possible decision and one that's fully informed. So without asking you to talk to the substance of the report whatsoever, I'd just like to get a quick sense from you whether you feel strongly that you can bring something to a debate beyond the issues that have been contemplated by officers in the report. In other words, if we're dealing with a banal issue that's long overdue, that was going to happen anyway, do you imagine that today you'll be bringing something of significant public interest to a discussion?
The answer is yes. I think that I don't want to talk to the substance of the report, but it's a precinct master planning conversation, not an operational pool conversation. And because it's a precinct master planning conversation that's being considered, a decision about council assets, including, a playground and things well beyond what you have said I shouldn't speak about, I think that I would add profound value, particularly in the context of the surrounding area that isn't mentioned in the map.
All right. All right. Well, are there any other speakers? No. All right. So the motion that we have at the moment is that Councillor Tozer must not participate in the decision because of the councillor's conflict of interest. Councillors, I'll put that to a vote. Although, Councillor Gates.
Sorry to interrupt, but could I just add that the public interest in this matter is better served by Councillor Tozer not participating in the decision?
Yes.
Rather than must not participate. That the public interest in this matter is better served by Councillor Tozer not participating in the decision.
I think we'll need to just check with Cherie between now and full council.
That's Cherie's.
Oh, it is.
She's clearly listening to our discussion.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Councillor O'Neill.
That the public interest in this matter is better served by Councillor Tozer not participating in the decision, full stop.
All right. Councillor O'Neill.
Just one more point. I'll just maybe ask Mr Pascoe. The recommendation is just for a budget figure to be considered in our future review for the master plan. So I'm assuming that in future meetings, when we start looking at master plans, that'll be another situation where Councillor Tozer may or may not declare we can talk about. Yep. Just because we brought up those two separate issues, Councillor Tozer's brought up the pool, but it actually says Mudgeeraba pool, so I think it's safer, Yeah,
and look, it could be that if the recommendation is to refer this to a budget meeting, it may then become an ordinary business matter, and then Councillor Tozer has an opportunity to use that exemption under the Act in order to participate in the decision-making process.
That's my point.
RBL?
Thanks, Chair. Just checking this decision now. Obviously, the recommendation talks about a master plan for that precinct, like the park and the aquatic centre. Would that exclude Councillor Tozer from any involvement in that process as well?
I think Councillor Tozer should seek some advice from the City Solicitor on that point. I think any issues that are canvassed in the report might be ensnared by the decision that we're about to make. But I think, and again, I'm not a lawyer, and I think Councillor Tozer needs to seek this advice from the City Solicitor, but it could be that a separate declaration made to full council concerning other matters may then afford him rights to participate in the more general master planning decision, perhaps.
Because just, Chair, the bit that's tricky for me is I can appreciate the conflict or perception of conflict around the aquatic centre and the operator of the aquatic centre, but it just, because there's more in the planning process than just that, and that's where I'm unsure.
Yeah, so I think there's an opportunity for Councillor Tozer, perhaps between now and full council, to get that further advice from the city solicitor about the broader scope and potentially bring a declaration to full council that can deal with some of the other elements of the precinct where he feels strongly he can and should be making a contribution apart from potentially the pool. Councillor Castro?
Sorry, just to make sure I've got this right, what we're saying is between now and full council, Councillor Tozer can get advice on whether he can be involved in speaking about the aspects that don't involve the aquatic centre specifically. So maybe, because I'm just wondering, can we make a decision on that now in the sense of he can stay in the room?
No, we can't, as Councillor Caldwell said, one, because we're not full council, and two, the declaration relates to the matter, and the matter is the report.
Yeah, okay. No,
So-
got it. Yeah.
So the declaration to broaden his ability to participate in other matters has to be one for full council.
So just, I want to be very clear about this. I entered into this being of the mind that Belgravia's relationship with the council in the terms of their contract ceases in 2023. Is that correct, through you to Mr Pascoe?
I think so, with a 1 year extension option. 2 by 1. Two by one.
And is that extension option at council's discretion or at their discretion?
At council's discretion.
Right, okay. So, and is there anything in this report that delivers any sort of, capital outcome prior to that time?
For you, Mr Chair, the intended delivery of the capital works is commencing from 25-26.
Yeah, okay,
and
thank you.
delivered and completed in 26-27.
Thank you. I'm clear on that. So, yes, I'm definitely keen to stay in the room.
All right, councillors. Yeah.
So firstly, I mean, I think, and Councillor Tozer would have already received this advice, but he probably at the moment, knowing that he has a conflict, shouldn't be having any meetings in the absence of a full council resolution to say that he has clearance to, like we would on any declaration. The second thing is that for the future, I think there will be a time where I see my way to supporting him staying in the room, because the nexus may well be broken at some point through a new contracting arrangement being made or whatever. Even if that's with Belgravia, that might be enough for me to say, righto, we've concluded that period of time and we're moving forward. But at the moment, I can't.
Would you like to close?
Not necessary.
Councillors, the motion before us is that the public interest in this matter is better served by Councillor G. Tozer not participating in the decision. I'll call that. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Got a division on it.
Division. So Councillor Gates, Councillor Caldwell, Councillor Ryan Belden-Lumsden, Councillor Castro, Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Vorster. All those against? All right. But we're not dealing with the matter yet, I don't think. I don't think it's the first up.
Oh, so we did it at the end. Okay.
Yeah. So we've got to deal with our start items first.
Of course.
Okay, so that's conflict of interest declarations done. Councillors, item 5.1, proposed agenda items for the Lifestyle and Community Committee. Abel, you had a question.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just, where is it, page 20, the 821st cycle, the petition about the beach access at Eandipple Lagoon. I was just wondering if there's potential for that to maybe be brought forward a couple of rounds. The question was just, depending what the decision is, the city's program starts in September, so I thought there might be need for a bit of time to implement it if we were looking to implement it. Just so through you to the Director, is it possible to maybe bring it forward a month or a cycle?
Through the Chair, Councillor Belden-Lumsden, I'll try. I just need to talk to Brookdown Holder just to make sure it's possible. So I'll take it on notice, but with the commitment that I'll try if it's possible.
All right.
Yeah.
So I'd suggest then, if it is possible, because I think that's a sensible suggestion on your part, if it is possible, then we should look at moving a change recommendation at full council, subject to the advice we receive.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So we'll leave that item starred seeing as there's no proposed changes to it. Councillors, did anyone wish to unstart the local area works program? Just checking that. The petition, the asset plan, the Palm Beach Aquatic Centre petition? No. Would someone like to move the start items? Councillor Gates, seconded by Councillor Tozer. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. All right, councillors, we now turn to the Mudgeeraba Aquatic Centre update, and we'll see you shortly, Councillor Tozer. Moved by Councillor Gates. Yeah, seconded by Councillor Caldwell. Councillor Gates, please.
Thank you. It's many, many years since I went on an inspection. It was prior to 2012 that I went on an inspection of this pool, and at that time it needed upgrade. And this is one of the reasons why I felt very comfortable in Councillor Tozer not being in the room. I think it's very clear that this work needs to be done, and it needs to be done as soon as it possibly can be. So by supporting the allocation today into the budget, we'll get there, and it's necessary and will be a great outcome for that facility in that location.
Yeah. Any speakers against? No. Councillor Gates, would you like to close?
No, it's fine. Thank you.
Shut the gate.
All those against, that is carried. Would someone like to welcome Councillor Tozer back into the room? No, it won't be fast, it'll be long and slow. All right, welcome back, Councillor Tozer. Good to have you back. We now have before us item 7.1, which is a closed session item, which also has an accompanying presentation. It does relate to the city's budget, and on that basis, we do need to move into close. We have a motion here that the committee move into closed session pursuant to section 254J3 of the Local Government Regulation 2012 for consideration of the following items for the reasons shown. Specifically that this report is to be considered in closed session on the basis that it involves the local government budget. Someone like to move that?
I'm not in your chair, not in your committee, Mr. Chair, but I had a question beforehand very quickly on why this report couldn't have been put together where the budget was an appendix so that most of it could have been able to be non-confidential and the budget part just be confidential. Like there's some brilliant stuff in here. Now the whole thing's on grey papers because of the budget stuff, which could have just been separated.
Well, what we're doing is we're moving into closed session for the purpose of the debate, and then usually it's up to council to decide which portions are made non-confidential, but that's nothing that we can do as a committee, and I suppose officers are sensitive not to prejudice our deliberations while heightening community expectation. Could be wrong. Director?
So through the chair, it won't all be redacted, so some of it will be open to the public as well. Yeah.
Cool.
But only after council resolves to permit that. Yep. So Councillor O'Neill moves us into close. Do I have a seconder? I'll second that. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That is All right. Thank you very much for those tuning in for your patience. We sincerely appreciate your time. What we have is a proposed recommendation concerning the implementation update of the Pizzey Park Master Plan. That's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor O'Neill. Noting that it is a confidential item, however, I'd like to invite Councillor Pauline Young to speak on my behalf. Thank you.
And thank you, Chair, and for everyone's purpose. I'm really pumped about this whole plan for Pizzey Park. It's a master plan that has not only been put together by council officers and ourselves, but the whole wider community, and for the number of people now living within the Gold Coast and accessing our sports and recreational grounds. I think it's incumbent upon every council to ensure that we've got facilities for everybody to be able to access. Not everyone can get a car park at the beach, as we know, and they can't get to those facilities. But Pizzey Park sits in the middle of residential area with close access to upcoming transport networks, and is in a prime location to service the recreational and sports needs of the wider community. It's a 60-hectare site. It's sees over 10,000 people come through a week for either recreational or sporting needs, training needs, and dog parks. So we're servicing a very wide part of the community, and with my fellow councillors' support on this plan going forward, to see the discussion of the potential planning and funding of this essential park within our city. With actually the addition of today, we've talked in closed session about. We had the opening of the skate park on Saturday, which was attended by 4,000 or 5,000 people. And I think one of the big takeouts from that for me was that culturally we used to think that it was, I guess, the naughty kids who skateboarded, or those kids that were wagging school and things like that. But it was very evident on Saturday that the cultural change within the skate and the BMX and the rollerblading and the roller skating community is amazing. And it's we had 3-year-olds on scooters. We had 63-year-olds on skateboarders. They were there. It was a family day. It was a park that was easily accessed. It had uses for everybody within the park. And so I'm really chuffed to see that the addition of number 4 here on our recommendation, the pump track, which will complement the use of that park. So it's the pump track will cater to those that are newer to being on wheels, whether it's on skateboards, BMX, scooters, rollerblades. We had derby, rollerblade and roller skaters there on the day as well. The whole feel of the park was amazing, and I think we don't have a pump track within the city currently. We have a much growing need for recreational uses amongst our residents, and as we know, with increases in home loan rates and things like that, people are going to be looking for those free or low cost entertainment offerings with the city to be able to continue supporting their home loans and that. So as a city, I think, with our parks being upgraded and facilities being offered, that will encourage everybody to have an active and healthy experience, and to be able to access a park that of this size, this nature, going forward. I think the plan that's been put forward, the endorsed plan that has now been supported by councillors, and now a funding ask going forward for the next 10 years to support the growth in the area. We, and I do understand that the northern end of the Gold Coast is where the biggest growth is, and they've got the biggest amount of usable land up there, but with the changing in demographics within our light rail corridors and the potential of a 30, 40 or 50% uplift in residents in those areas, I think it's incumbent upon us to ensure that the parks that we've got are going to service the people that are going to be moving and relocating into the community around the transport corridors. So I'm grateful that my councillors have spent, fellow councillors have spent quite a deal of time discussing this today, and very grateful for their support going forward.
Thanks, Councillor Young. I don't imagine there are any speakers against. I'd just like to close by simply congratulating you for your tenacity in supporting the development of the master plan, being so sincere with your consultation with the community and giving us as a council an opportunity to potentially endorse delivery of a project that's actually not to do with your division, but one that's city significant, and in my view, that's underpinned by public transport connecting a large swathe of the Gold Coast to this area. It's not just about Division 12, it's about all of us, and I think you've done a hell of a job, and I know exactly how it feels because I've been in a similar position, and I know every single other councillor has been in a position as well, because we're here to do one job and one job alone, and that's to represent our communities, and clearly this is a priority for your patch. So well done, Councillor Young. Councillors, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried, and inappropriate meeting conduct for Councillor Hamill. Look, councillors, before we invite a very special city officer up just very briefly, we'd have 3 general business items to run through super quickly, I hope. Shall we bring up the first? The first is 8.1. Now, I've prepared this in consultation with the Mayor following the Mayor's discussions with Councillor Young. The recommendation reads that the Corporate Communication Branch develop and execute a promotional campaign to support the Gold Coast trial of the Community Camera Alliance to underpin support for a citywide rollout, including in all suburban areas. If I have a seconder for that. Yeah. All right, Councillor Gates. Vote. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried.
Is the comms plan to try and advocate for the expansion of the program?
No, the comms plan is to...
I didn't even get a chance to read it.
The comms plan is to encourage people to participate in the trial so that the trial can make the case for a citywide rollout. Councillor Gates, you had one concerning major sporting venues policy review.
Thanks, Chairman. And the Director has provided me with some information that differs from advice that I had from one of the school principals. The recommendations on the screen, and I would like, I don't know that we need the policy reviewed, but maybe we need a report, because there is conflicting information coming forward. So the essence of it is that I've received notification that 4,500 kids couldn't do school sport last week because of the very late cancellation of the school's access to our major sporting venues, both at Coomera and Carrara. And it was suggested to me that the reason for the cancellation was that council had the Gold Coast Careers Festival on, and that taekwondo events were also happening. Now, the officers have suggested that the school cancelled the opportunity because the sporting fields were out of use because of their condition. Now, it's clearly not the case that this principal believes that's the case. He's asking for more than 2 days' notice of the cancellation of any bookings. He's also concerned that with wet weather, they never know until that week whether the fields are going to be usable or not, and yet they're required to pay the full fee unless they give 14 days' notice in advance. So I think we need a report back to council on the policy. I don't know what you feel, but...
Yeah, so, Councillor Gates, particularly on that last point, I've had a school affected by that, particularly when state schools organise amongst themselves some competition where you have multiple schools affected, wet weather wreaks havoc, and then they're up for all sorts of cancellation fees that make it impossible for them to book a second time. Perhaps we could narrow the word that we simply say that a report be brought forward reviewing the cancellation policies at our major sporting venues. And that will give us the flexibility to look at all manner of issues concerning costs, notice, and priority given to different users.
Well, they're suggesting that the venues are double booked and they get shafted, basically.
So how about the booking and cancellation policies at our major sporting venues?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
So that's moved by Councillor Gates. I'm happy to second that in case Councillor Caldwell.
Sorry, I mean, the employment festival, whatever it's called, I mean, that would have had a long booking ahead of time, I would have thought.
So through the chair, I mean, I think I've had a couple of these lately where when I've actually gone and dug into it, hasn't been the case.
Yeah.
However, I do think we need to probably get our comms a bit more, because I think obviously what's happening is that we've got clear evidence, the ones I've looked into, so not the one that Councillor Gates is talking about, but the ones I've looked into have got clear evidence that we've actually sent out 3 months in advance the schedules, that sort of thing. Where it seems to break down is what, like the one I looked into was a basketball one, what they're telling the parents. So they're telling the parents, cancel again, sort of thing, and it wasn't the case. So I think we just need to think about how we communicate that differently. Maybe we need to be down there with the groups, I'm not sure.
And so is there a situation that would arise where a community group gets bumped from Coomera indoor sports at short notice?
So through the chair, my understanding, I haven't seen any evidence of short notice, but definitely in advance, absolutely, because we're always balancing that revenue coming in and having those attracting big events with community use, and that's clear to people when they actually book those venues. But the last one I looked into, I can't talk for every example, was 3 months in advance, absolutely clear. And actually, the one I looked into before that, they knew before they placed their bookings that there was a possibility, and then they knew 3 months in advance. So
I mean, one of the things that I thought about just at the moment is like the federal election impacts with polling booths in our community facilities. I mean, I assume that the various activities that normally happen in the Runaway Bay Community Centre are not happening this week.
Right, yeah.
And so there's that imposition.
And we do our best to try and relocate them, et cetera, but it's absolutely a balancing act every time.
And that's actually mentioned, the fact that they couldn't use Runaway Bay because it had a bigger project underway. So the email also stipulated that Division 6 and Division 8 schools have also been impacted. So I don't know, Councillor Lacastre, if you've been aware of it, but this will get to the bottom of it. Thank you.
All right. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. Do we have a third? Or did I make that up? Look, so we've already dealt with the item, Councillor, but the report concerning Ian Dipple Lagoon can come forward at 8:20. So perhaps at full council we'll move an amendment, or city officers might just bring it forward. But at the very least, you can give your community some certainty by moving an amendment at next full council. Look, councillors, before we close, and thank you for your patience today. I know this meeting ran a bit longer than the last. Just a bit. I just want to reflect on the fact that today we've really talked about how our community can enjoy community spaces, the spaces that belong to them. And we've also talked a lot about grassroots sport. And in the lead up to 2032, it is just so important that we connect more young people with an opportunity to participate in grassroots sport. And even those who are not gold medalists will learn an incredible amount about teamwork, fair play and high performance out on the field or out on the track. Now, over the last 30 years, we've had an internal champion of grassroots sport with Bruce Flick. For 30 years, he has spearheaded the delivery and the project management of so many facilities right across the Gold Coast that have given more kids an opportunity to be active and engaged. Bruce is retiring. I was going to say he's moving on, but that would have been uncharitable. He is retiring after a very esteemed career in council. And I really worry about how we're going to plug the gap that he will leave in terms of his corporate knowledge. I think, Bruce, it'd be fair to say you've outlived many councillors. You've probably heard every story 100 times. You've seen and done it all. For whatever it's worth, on behalf of our committee, I'd just like to very much thank you for your career in the city. You have left an indelible mark on the way that sport is conducted, and I know many community groups wouldn't be in the position that they are today but for your advocacy and preparedness to go into bat for projects, whether it's lighting, irrigation, or even securing land to begin with. On behalf of the committee, I sincerely appreciate that. And I'd invite maybe a few councillors who would like to share some remarks to also heap praise on you to Bruce, and then maybe you'd like to share a few of your own thoughts. Councillor Gates.
Thank you, and I'm not going to tell you how long I've worked with Bruce Flick. It will make me seem older than I am. But I just want to say it's not just been kids and grassroots sport. Bruce's reputation is far and wide right across our city, and only a couple of weeks ago I represented the mayor down at the Broadbeach Bowls Club. And they couldn't speak highly enough of the assistance that they'd specifically had from Bruce Flick over many, many years. And I don't know how many of the councillors are aware of the activities at that club, but they're absolutely astounding. And, you know, they make their club available for our surf life-saving events, and it was only recently we welcomed the Commonwealth Games baton back, and it was at the Broadbeach Bowls Club. So, Bruce, from me personally, thank you so much for your help over the years. I never understand my budget correctly, and you always sort me out. And you've just been an amazing support and always so reasonable and fair. So thank you very much, and I wish you every happiness in the world into the future.
Reasonable, fair, frank and fearless, I'm going to add into the mix as well. Bruce. Councillor Castro.
Look, I think Donna's actually said a lot of what I would say, but look, I've worked with Bruce for the last 25 years, and I have to echo everything that you've said and Donna has said. Bruce, I think, has had one of the toughest gigs in the city. He really has. He's got to be across absolutely every sport, every club throughout the city. He's not just looking after a little pocket, the whole city. His knowledge, as you say, well, it can't be replaced. I did actually suggest the other day that, I don't know if it's filtered back to you, Director, but I think he needs to be tied to a chair for the rest of the week. We need to get every bit of information out of him that we can, everything we possibly can.
He's going to miss me bowling up to his desk, I think, Councillor. Yeah. So,
yeah, don't let him go until we've got every last thing. But, Bruce, from a personal point of view, you've just been absolutely fabulous. You've never, ever let my community down. You've never let me down, no matter what day of time or night that I've rung you with whatever issues. You've always been across them. I can't speak highly enough of you either. You're certainly, you know, up in that top handful of officers I've worked with in my 25 years. You're right at the top, mate. So thank you so much for all you've done. And you will be missed, and you are irreplaceable. So.
And thank you through the chair, and Bruce, from me too, a very big thank you. Only having been in the 7th year in the job now, but for when I go back to when we were first elected, and every portfolio that needs to be explained to us going forward, your patience, your understanding, your ability to help us on the uptake of how the actual process goes, and even though sometimes it probably goes a bit longer than we'd want, your patience with everything along the line. But for me too, I think a stamp of the person is the number of your colleagues, the number of the staff that work under you, with you, beside you, and in other departments that speak so highly of the job that you do, that makes their job easier. When it comes back to, and I think with the new CEO saying, you know, we need to be working holistically as a team, you've led the way on that, and every staff member that I've been in contact with that's worked with you, could not speak highly enough about how they always felt valued and how they felt part of the team. So for me, you've left a legacy with the city in the fact of how you conduct your business. So thank you.
Bruce, oh, sorry, Councillor O'Neill. Sorry, it's my peripheral vision.
I know, I'm over here. Well, Bruce, it's only been just over 6 years for me, but it's been a hell of a 6 years, hasn't it? And I apologise up front for Kira Pavilion. And I do believe it, I think it was your words, it might be the nail in my coffin. But I certainly echo the sentiments that you've heard around the table today. But when I came in, every sporting club that I met with initially, every surf club that I met with initially as a councillor, all sang your praises and appreciated what you've done for them over the years. So, and that's a testament to the work that you've done, the person that you are, and your commitment to the job. And commitment to the job you don't see a lot, you know, in current times, because I'm old school, and you certainly have that old school commitment. You see a project through, you live and breathe it, you certainly go without sleep because of it, and I'll go back to the Kira Pavilion. But just for me, I'm going to shout you a drink at Siblings, don't worry. But I just want to say thank you very much for all the help that you've given me, all the help and support you've given to all the groups, sporting and community groups in my area, and I wish you happy golfing and get that handicap down.
Yeah. Bruce, just before you share a few words, I just want to reflect on the Diamond Sports Plan. I went into that process gung-ho, it needs to look like this, da-da-da-da, and Bruce was like, no, this is the way it needs to play out. And in the end, it was Bruce's view, not my own view, that was completely vindicated. And that's why I just want to stress that losing 30 years of corporate knowledge is a major loss to this organisation. And I've needed pushing back on, and Bruce, I've really appreciated the way that you've done that in good spirit. And if you're up to it, I'd just love you to perhaps respond to some of these niceties.
Wow. Totally unexpected, but councillors, I truly appreciate your thoughts, your words. It's been an absolute pleasure. Have I made the right decision? Absolutely. It's time to move on. But obviously when you worked in an organisation for almost half your life and most of that time in the one area, which I happen to love, been involved in sport and recreation all my life, well, it becomes a little easier, but also you've got to look at it with a tad of sadness, I suppose, or a tinge of sadness that it's about to end. It's a bit surreal at the moment, hasn't really sunk in. I'm going on leave and I expect to walk back through the door, but that won't happen. But look, I'd like to think I've made a difference to the city, or led down a path that the sport and recreational industry within council can continue on that merry road. But I haven't done it all on my own. I've had the support of not only the councillors of the day, but fellow officers, and my team's been fantastic. Director, managers, I can't speak highly enough. So it's a team effort in the end of the day. But I'll miss the place. But again, I appreciate the thoughts.
Awesome.
Bruce put his resignation in the next day.
Councillors, with a tinge of sadness, I declare the meeting closed at 11:01. Thank you.